to the Thursday, July 23rd, 2020 edition of the Clemson Dubcast, originating from our lovely basement studios in the greater Clemson Central metropolis. Football team continuing to move toward what we think, hope, pray will be the start of August camp on the weekend of August 6th and 7th, even though in-person instruction at the university has been delayed. I actually think that news that came yesterday about them delaying in-person classes might actually be maybe a good thing for football, in that it keeps sort of preserves the pseudo bubble that they have created for themselves as they continue to try to get their arms around managing the virus. Plenty of continuing recruiting coverage and analysis and news by Paul Streetload at TigerIllustrated.com. And of course, our In Their Words series continues, rolls on. We got Antoine McLean later today. A great conversation with him. And then Kalen Davis coming tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Also stay tuned to an actual podcast with both of those guys, I think next week. So watch out for that. Title sponsor of the Dubcast since the very beginning, back in August of 2018, Parham Smith & Archenhold Law Firm in downtown Greenville. They want you to know that their office remains open and available to serve you during the COVID-19 crisis. They are also offering their clients the ability to meet via telephone or through video conferencing. Whether you have a loved one who has suffered from a car accident, defective product, a neglectful nursing home facility, or medical malpractice issue, Parham Smith & Archenhold's Greenville lawyers can provide the protection and guidance you need. Free consultations, 864-990-4581, or on the web at parhamlaw.com. That's Parham law.com. Another loyal supporter of the Dubcast is Blackacre Law Firm in Greenville, a subsidiary of Parham Smith & Archenhold. Blackacre helps South Carolina residents achieve their dreams of home ownership by providing experienced professional representation for real estate closings. Attention to detail is crucial in real estate law. Blackacre is committed to making sure nothing gets by them preparing residential or commercial closings. Blackacre also offers estate planning services for their clients in the Greenville area. Find out more about Blackacre at 864-326-3507. Okay, to our interview with Akeem Robinson, the current strength coach at Southeastern University in Lakeland, Florida, also pursuing his doctorate in strategic leadership. Really impressive guy with a really remarkable story. And Dabo Swinney probably isn't going to be taking advice from me anytime soon, but I would advise at some point that Dabo consider bringing Akeem Robinson into the fold as a player development guy, sports psychologist. He could be a real asset, and I think you'll hear that during the course of this interview. Okay, here we go. Enjoy. Welcome, Akeem Robinson, to the podcast. Akeem, appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor, and I'm just privileged to have this opportunity. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. The pleasure's ours. So we wrote an article, we did an interview with you last week, from which we wrote an article that went over really well among our subscribers at TigerIllustrated.com. And so some of the things referenced in the article were referenced briefly, and so the object of having you on the podcast is to tell your story in a lot fuller fashion. So I guess let's start at the beginning. One of the things I had forgotten, I mean, you played at Clemson from, I guess you lettered from 05 to 08, and one of the things I had forgotten was you only played a year of high school football in Miami and offensive tackle at that. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So my brief football high school career was literally, I grew up hating football, didn't really enjoy it. And I wanted to get out. I wanted to get to college because I knew my parents didn't have the means of doing it. And so for me, I was like, well, the only thing I think I can think of is try my hand at football. So I tried my junior year, and in my junior year, I only played 2 games and I separated my shoulders. So that was it. I was at tight end and I caught 1 pass. And then I tried again my senior year. And like when I say I knew nothing about football. I didn't know defensive fronts. I didn't know what blitzes were. I just was a guy that would play a video game, but I didn't understand the ins and outs of football. So that senior year, when I went back out and tried out again, I was having one-on-one meetings with the head football coach, and he would teach me fronts and he would teach me schemes. And then I would do them that next week, and I'll be playing on that Friday. So literally I was just in the mix going. And then by the end of the season, you know, O-line is one of those positions where you don't get stats, but we like to keep pancakes. Like, how many guys can you put on their back? So by the end of the season, I finished the year with 80 pancake blocks.
Wow.
And so I finished the year with 80 pancake blocks. I gave up 2 sacks and I had 2 tackles. And luckily for us, I had no highlight film, but because we went to state and won state, they kept playing the game over and over and over. And so a lot of teams caught wind of me at tackle through that as well.
And this is for 6A Carroll City High School in Miami, like not small potatoes.
No. Yeah. Like, you know, the teams you hear about all the time, the Northwesterns, Booker T. Washington, Miami Central, you know, we played them, you know, and so that's why it was a true honor, and just having that opportunity to just continue to learn. And then at the end of the day, getting an offer from, you know, Clemson and Miami and Rutgers and those places, I would have never dreamed of that. But it was something that I worked hard for, and I was truly blessed to be in that opportunity.
What, tell me about your upbringing. You said there, what inspired you to have I guess, to want to go to college? And you said your family didn't have the means, but you still really felt like you wanted to go through that experience.
Well, both of my parents are not from this country. My dad was born and raised in Jamaica, and my mom was born in England, but grew up in Barbados. So both of my parents are from the islands, and they met at college. So that's how both of my parents came to this country, because they were on track scholarships to run for Idaho University.
Wow.
So my dad ran, and then my dad ended up running for the Jamaica national team and represented Jamaica. And so my parents were track stars. My parents ran really fast, but that was not in my blood. And so for me, I kind of wanted a similar story. You know, they went from, you know, working their way out, went from doing their own thing and having this opportunity to continue education. And so for me, that's what inspired me. It inspired me to say, well, I can do something similar. I know they don't have a means, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse. I'm not going to use that as a fallback plan. So I'm going to make this happen. And, you know, again, just being blessed with the opportunity and just the body to be able to do it, it was a true blessing.
All right. So you did you say you were offered by Miami?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the schools that I was offered by were Clemson, Rutgers, University of South Florida, and Miami. And Miami offered me 2 weeks before signing day, and I turned them down on the phone. And so, because I was that typical high schooler, a chip on my shoulder, and I was like, you know, I went to all your camps, because I wanted to go to Miami, and I went to all your camps, and you didn't offer me. And I remember going to my friend, and I said, "Who plays against Miami and Florida State?" Because I had that chip. I was pissed. I'm not gonna lie, because Florida State never sent me one letter, and I was like, "Well, I want to go to Miami." And then Miami offered me as like a second tier guy. And so I just went to my friend one day and I said, "Who plays against them?" Because obviously didn't know anything about football. And then I got a letter from Clemson, and he said, "You know what that means?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "It's a letter from Clemson." And I was like, "I still don't know what that means." He was like, "It's orange." And I was like, "Okay." He was like, "Man, they only send the people they like orange letters." He said, "Other people that get letters from Clemson are white. So you got an orange one." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I had no idea where Clemson was. So I looked them up on the map. Yeah, not even online. I looked them up on literally a map and found them in Clemson, South Carolina, and then looked them up and see if they played against Miami and Florida State. And I was like, I can dig that. I can do that.
They checked all the boxes, all 2 of them.
Pretty much. They checked all the boxes. So literally it was started off as a revenge quest, if you will.
So, okay, Miami in the time you were in high school. Okay, so your senior year is 2003. I mean, they were a powerhouse of powerhouses back then, and to turn them down, a lot different than it is now.
Yeah, 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 a lot different. And then, to turn them down, and even like my cousin was going to Florida. Because my cousin had a similar story. He ran track for Florida. And so I was like, I want to do my own thing. And I was like, I'm not taking a backseat to anybody. So I had a chip on my shoulder, and I was like, I want to do my own thing. And, I appreciate, and I told them, I said, I appreciate the offer, but these schools have been with me since the beginning. So I'm going to go with one of these schools.
So Clemson had been on you for quite a while, I guess.
Yeah. I was in the very beginning of their process, and they were very open to putting me in different positions, because my biggest concern was, again, chip on your shoulder, eyes in the sky, kind of want to be freshman. I didn't want to play O-line in Clemson. I didn't want to play offensive line. And so, because I played O-line in high school at 250. And so I was just kept telling the coaches, hey, I want to try other things, because I only played 1 year. So I don't even know what my potential is. And when I look back at it, I'm like, what were you doing, man? Like, but it was a blessing. And the coaches, they worked with me. They allowed me to do that. They allowed me to voice my opinion in that. And I ended up getting a shot at tight end. So it was definitely a blessing. Was
David Blackwell the recruiter?
No, at the time it was Ron West. It was Coach West. He was my recruiter at the time, and he was the D-line coach there at the time, and he was the one recruiting me. And so I just love how honest he was with me. I love how just open he was, and when I asked questions, he talked to me. He was able to communicate with me instead of just selling me a dream. He never sold me a dream, and it was just, this is what it is. This is what we would like, but I'm just open to listening to you. So I appreciated that about him.
What was the reaction from the folks down there? Not only about saying no thanks to Miami, but going to Clemson up in some obscure state called South Carolina.
It was a mixed bag of both, to be quite honest, because I was one of the guys to sign to a really big school that day. And so people were happy for me, but confused at the same time. They were like, why Clemson? And like, they were saying, why Clemson? And like, why would you leave the state? And like, I got a lot of that, but people were still confused. And I told them very honestly, very open. I said, Clemson gives me everything I want. At Clemson, I'm the main attraction. I was like, I don't have to fight with any professional teams. I don't have to fight with any other college but one. And I was like, I want that. I want that feeling, And so they were happy for me, but it was confusing to turn down Miami in those golden era, And
so when you did get to Clemson, was it a bit of a culture shock coming to such a dramatically different place?
Oh, no question. I mean, from the landscape of, you see more trees, you see more green, you see more rolling hills, in Florida, and just Miami alone, the highest point of elevation are the landfills. And so at the end of the day, to see hills and you're like, this is wild. And again, it's like stuff you see in the movies. So that was different. And I mean, tiger paws painted on the streets before you get to campus, like miles out. It was a surreal kind of a feeling, but it always felt welcoming. And then it was a culture shock too, because my high school, I graduated with over 500 in my graduating class. And in that graduating class, there were probably one hand of, I can count, just being open and honest, white people, one hand. And so it was dramatically different. And so just being in that different kind of culture and different kind of place was just different to get used to.
What's it like? And this is a topical part of conversation these days, the past a couple of months with everything that's been going on. And I've talked about it with other interviewees. What is it like for an African American athlete on a predominantly white campus in South Carolina, in sort of rural South Carolina? I know you said last week during our other interview that people were like, "Be careful up there." You know, what was the overall experience like compared to what I guess maybe you were warned about or feared or whatever?
Well, that's a great question. And to be open and honest, I was racially profiled one time while I was there. I've been racially profiled 3 times in my life. And so that did happen. And I ended up getting the charges dropped because they didn't have a legitimate case. They didn't have any right to give me the ticket. But besides from that, I never felt open forms of hatred. I never felt open forms of people just disliking me. I never felt that. But from where I'm from and my upbringing and what I know about history, it still was uneasy. I mean, I did have a couple arguments with teammates because they would have the Confederate flag in their house. And being at my age, instead of having a conversation with them, I felt uneasy. And instead of telling them how I felt, and even if we disagreed, I just was like, I don't want to be here, you know? And so I wish I would have handled it differently, because we're both just in college learning and they're doing what they learned. I'm doing what I learned, but I wish we would have talked about it. But you still do know about it. You know about it. It's in the back of your mind. And it's one of those things where I believe this to be true. When you're an athlete at a predominantly white kind of based campus, but a lot of the athletes are people of color and Black, that you do feel some kind of way to either represent, you know, the other athletes. You do feel some kind of way to represent your family or represent someone, to not be the one to drop the ball. And so that was there. But am I saying that was there because people made me feel like that? No, but I felt like that based on what I've learned in the past and my history. And so I went up there with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, would you mind going into detail about the profiling incident?
Oh, so, yeah, not at all. So this was on a Friday night. This was on Saturday night. Yeah, this was on a Saturday night. And it was me and a group of guys in the car. And the majority of us were Black, but we did have one white guy in the car with us. And at the time, I was at the stoplight and I was going right. And the police officer was probably, give or take, close to 100 yards down the road, on the same road I was turning right on. And so from there, he was already ahead of me. So I stopped at the light, checked, and then went on the same road that he was on. He ended up turning off the road to go into a small little convenience store. And this was late at night. This was in, close to 1, 2 o'clock, kind of late time at night. And I ended up passing him. When I passed him, he came back out, and everybody kind of started saying stuff like, "Hey, Akeem, did you notice he came back out?" And I was like, "Oh, no, he's probably just changed his mind." Next thing I know, the lights came on, and I'm like, "Oh, wow. Okay. Okay." So now my awareness is up. My awareness always goes up when I'm around police officers, because people are telling me, "Hey, my parents taught me from the very beginning, don't make eye contact with police officers. Don't disrespect police officers." So my awareness was up, like, what's going on? He ends up pulling us over, and he says, "You guys are out late tonight. What's going on?" And I said, we went out. We had a good time, but, we're just going home. And he said, "Has anybody been drinking?" And I said, "A few of them, but they're of age." And I said, "But I have not been drinking." And he says, "Okay." So then he walks back to his car, does something. He comes back out, checks the car, checks everybody, checks my license. And then after a few minutes of conversation, he says, "You know what? I thought you guys were drunk, but after speaking to you, you're not. So I'm just going to give you this ticket for reckless driving anyway." And I just remember looking like, I don't understand. Why am I still getting a ticket when nobody in here did anything wrong? They're of age. I have a license. I did everything right, but I'm still getting this ticket because you assume something instead of just saying, hey, made a mistake. That's my fault. I'm going to leave. But no, he still ended up giving us a ticket. So he drove off. I started driving off, and the rest of the guys start losing their minds. They start telling me like, this is wrong. I can't believe it. And I'm like, and again, I'm still like trying to process what just happened because I was already on edge. Like, I'm like, hey, like, this is like I heard about. This is like what they were saying. So I was already on edge. And so a few days go by, and back in Miami, I had some friends that were police officers. And so I told them that what happened. And they said, Akeem, you need to report that, which I didn't even know I could. And so, because again, I was never taught you can report when something happens that you feel unjust. I never was taught that if you think something's not right, you can report it. So I ended up reporting it, and literally I got a call saying the ticket was dropped. You don't have to worry about it no more. And ever since then, I was like, okay, it is real.
What would you say to the, the response though of, hey, that could have been anybody that some overzealous cop just gave a ticket to on really no grounds, that could have been a white guy too. What would you? Mm-hmm. It might not necessarily have been profiling. Just out of this devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, that's a legit question. That's a good question. I think at the end of the day, if I'm talking to anyone, yeah, the first thing that I'm going to say is you got to keep your head. You have to keep your head, because two wrongs don't make a right. And so at the end of the day, if I felt like I was wrong and I felt like he was doing it unjust, and all of a sudden I started getting belligerent, I started getting loud, I started getting angry and frustrated, am I in the meetings and then right to? Maybe, yeah. But at the end of the day, like it can be taken out of context. Things can be taken out of place. And then all of a sudden I can be made into the bad guy. So if anyone's in that situation, I say, keep your head. And at the end of the day, if something was done unjust, you report it. You literally report it, and you give them the story of what happened, because that is literally what happened. And I would have paid the ticket. I would have gone, because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. I did not think police officers could be in the wrong. I really didn't, but I didn't do anything wrong. And so if anybody's in that situation, I truly mean this. And I know I might get some weird looks, and I might get some, that's not right, and that's the problem. And I get that. That is a problem. I truly agree. That's a problem. But people are not making it right and not helping it if I start to curse him out, if I start to lose my mind, because now I'm endangering the other guys in the back. And so it wasn't about me at the time. It was just like, hey, I want to get these guys home. I want to get my brothers home. And so I think one of the things you have to do is keep your head. And one of the things that we did here at Southeastern, not even a month ago, is we brought officers on campus to talk to some of the football players here for the summer. And one of the guys asked that same question. And literally one of the black police officers said, I know this sounds crazy, but he said, I was illegally arrested, but keep your head, my brother, is what he said. He said, keep your head and you report it. You report it. And so I'm not just talking from my experience. I'm not just talking because I'm thinking emotional, and I'm not talking because I'm just trying to be not informed. I'm talking because of what I went through personally, and I'm talking because I got that firsthand experience, story, and detail of what you should do from another police officer of color.
If you're in the Eastern Midlands and PD area and you're in any way interested in buying and selling a home, commercial property, land, need to consider reaching out to Uptown Realty. They're based out of Sumter and run by a friend of mine, Patrick Enzer, big Clemson guy. Used to cover the Tigers in a newspaper capacity, longtime supporter of Tiger Illustrated, longtime listener to the Dubcast. The home buying process should be an enjoyable experience, so let Patrick and his staff do all the heavy lifting. All you got to do is pick up the phone and call 803-774-0435 or go to uptownrealtysc.com. FoundersFC.com. Happy to have Founders Federal Credit Union on board as a sponsor with us. If you've been to a sporting event in Clemson, you've probably heard about Founders already. They are the official credit union partner of the Clemson Tigers. In addition to that, all Clemson faculty, staff, and students are eligible for membership as well as IPTAY members. Matt Gross is a proud Clemson alum and the vice president for the Clemson market for Founders Federal Credit Union. Matt's office is located beside the Walmart Neighborhood Market on Old Greenville Highway in Clemson. For more information, go to foundersfcu.com. You know, we had Patrick Sapp on. I don't know if you remember him or, I guess about a month ago. And one of the most poignant things that he brought up, kind of a revelation, I suppose, to some, some white folks, I guess, is, his teenage son who's driving, when he sends his son out, when his son goes out to go to the store or wherever, the list of concerns or the checklist of things he has to go over with his son is quite lengthier than a checklist that I would have, with my daughter, whereas I'm worried about my daughter. Okay, is she going to wear her seatbelt? Is she going to be texting while she's driving on down the line? Well, he has that list, is my son going to come home and, not get in a wreck? But that list also includes, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if he gets pulled over and gets pushed around by a cop? And it's how to, like you were saying earlier, don't look them in the eye. I mean, that's almost heartbreaking to even consider, that's part of and that's been part of the instructions from parents to their kids.
Oh yeah, my parents educated me on that. My parents said when a police officer is approaching you, or if you're next to a police officer at the light, turn your music down, roll your window down. This is my checklist. You want to hear a checklist? My checklist was, if I'm next to a police officer, not being pulled over, next to a police officer at the light, make sure my windows are down so they can see inside, make sure my music is down, and then make sure I'm looking straight ahead and not at them. So I have a checklist too.
Yeah.
And so let's not, and you hear these things, right? You hear these things, but you never think, right? People never think it's going to be them. They never think it's going to happen to them, but it does. And it's very real. And it's worse when you go through it. It's worse because your blood is boiling. You're terrified. I'm shaking. And then the other rule that I have is, if you're in the car by yourself, take all of your things out and put them in the passenger seat. And you have to ask permission to reach for your stuff.
Yeah. You mentioned, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your thought.
No, go ahead, brother.
You mentioned being in college and having friends or teammates, whoever, have Confederate flags, but, it upsets you. I'm curious, in light of, I guess, the cancel culture or whatever you call it, like what is your take on, like, let's say hypothetically, teammate A now in 2020 rehashed or dredged up something that white teammate B said or did back in 2005, whether it be I support the Confederate flag or and made a public item of that in hopes of maybe that person experience some sort of punishment, whether it's losing his job or whatever. Do you have because I think you hit on it. You said we were both learning. We're both in college. We're both young and still developing. And so do you have an opinion on that, things of going that far back historically, especially when people were learning and still sort of in their formative years and being sort of held accountable or punished for something that was said during that time?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing to both sides is we have to be willing to have difficult conversations, and we have to be willing to educate each other. Because in hindsight, looking back, I would have asked him this simple question: why do you have that up? And I can almost guarantee his response would have probably been, because this is my culture, this is what I grew up with. And I would have then said, do you know what it originally represented? Is how I should have handled that conversation. Because what it originally represents is not being equal. What it originally represents is not being seen as the same. And so at the end of the day, you have to, if you're willing to hang that up, you have to be willing to understand the history of what it was up for.
Or to be willing to understand why somebody's upset over you having it.
And to me, I think that's the thing. And like, here's the thing about conversation and even debate and things like that. Like, and I've learned a lot, I would have done that, not for him to see my point and take it down, but for him to be willing to do his own research. For him to be willing to do his own research and look into why he wants to represent that. Do his own research and look into why he believes he should have that up. Because that's the thing, right? That's the real key. The real key is don't think like me. I tell my student athletes all the time, don't think like me. I just want you to think. You know?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
I just want you to think. Because I tell people all the time, don't just vote to just go out there and vote. Know what you're voting for. And if you know what you're voting for, that means you're researching what you want. That means you're researching what's the best candidate. And I said, and also, if you're going to be willing to vote, you got to be willing to vote in your town halls. You got to be willing to vote in your cities. I said, because they're having elections too on school districts, funding, money that's being distributed. And those are really where things are happening. So you have to be willing to do research and be willing to educate yourself. So to answer your question, I think it starts with an uncomfortable conversation. And when I say an uncomfortable conversation, it starts with an uncomfortable conversation of both of them not trying to be right, but both just trying to educate. And then from there, they can both leave and be willing to do their own research. Because that's the real, to me, that's the real key, right? And some people, I feel, forget that last part, to do the research. We just kind of fall into it, and society kind of tells us that's what we should do. And I don't even want to make it political, but that's how it is. Sometimes people think a certain way because we look a certain way, because we're told to do that. No, do your research.
So you were around during the changeover, I guess, in 2008. Yep. When Tommy Bowden was out and Dabo Swinney was in, and as you told us last week, that one of your most memorable experiences and fulfilling experiences was when you decided to speak up late that year. I guess Dabo's second game as interim head coach, the night before the Boston College game. Can you maybe elaborate on that? It just sort of reset the stage a little bit.
Yeah. So I got put on senior council, and senior council is pretty much the seniors that have earned the right to be on this. And in that, we discuss what jerseys we would like to wear, jersey combinations, what movie we would like to see. And then he just tells us his thoughts before he approaches the entire team. So it's almost like a lieutenant meeting, if you will, of like, this is my battle strategy. And just even from the night of how do you want to have fun before we go into it. And so we're discussing the jersey we want, and we're discussing the movie we want to see, which I don't remember. And then he says, anything else? And I just remember thinking to myself, Akeem, I just view the game differently, man. I just see the game differently. So you're either going to sit here and not say it, or you're just going to say how you feel. And I remember just thinking that, and I just remember saying to myself, I have something to say, just like that. And he looks up at me and he goes, I can see whatever you have to say doesn't need to be said now, but you can tell the team. And I said, okay. And so then when we approach the whole entire team, it's usually the same. We watch a highlight video, we watch the special teams, and we kind of just watch formations. And then from there, the coach gives his last thoughts, and then all the coaches just get up and leave. And this is my favorite part because it reminds me of what a battle I think would look like.
Yeah, really dramatic.
Yeah, and that's just how my mind works. So they all just get up and leave, and then the room is quiet because now the floor is open to whoever has anything to say. And so at this point, this is my 5th year. I've seen countless leaders, countless people get up and speak their heart and cry and just use that platform. And so I took it. And I just remember getting up and I just was like, and I'm screaming, by the way, and there's things that I can't say, but that I did say at the time. But I said, I don't care how you spell it, but everybody want to talk about how big Boston College is, how great Boston College is. I said, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, what I know is no matter how many times you put B-I-G into something, it can never spell M-A-N. And so the room loses their minds. The room is losing their minds. And I'm just speaking. I'm not trying to excite anyone. I'm not trying to make people think like me. Again, it's that same process, right? Don't think like me. I'm just telling you how I feel. So I just want you to understand what this means to me. And so the room is going nuts. And after we speak, this has always been tradition. I don't know if they still do it, but we all turn around in our seats and we pray. And so to me, that's why it's always like that last moment, that campfire night before you go into the battlefield. So we just turn around in our seats and we take a knee and we pray on our seats and we do the Lord's Prayer. And so for me, after we left the room, people just kept coming up to me as I was going up to my room and saying, Akeem, that got me fired up, man. I'm ready to go now. Akeem, man, I loved it. And I'm just like, I'm really sitting here like, I don't know what I said different, but I appreciate it. And so then it became the running thing of every week it became that thing of, what do you got, Keem? Talk to us, Keem. And it was, I loved it. I truly was thankful for that moment and the opportunity because, again, that wasn't me trying to hype them up. That was just me speaking from my own heart.
So you're, in addition to being the head strength coach at Southeastern in Lakeland, you're also pursuing a doctorate. I'm not sure how you do that time-wise, but a doctorate in strategic leadership. I'm guessing that Dabo Sweeney is quite a case study in strategic leadership.
No question. And if he's listening to it, or if he does have the opportunity to listen to it, I'd love to do some research on him. I'd love to.
I'm sure he'd be open to it.
You get no book, but no, yeah. At the end of the day, it's constantly, and I tell the athletes this, it's constantly trying to see what my limit is. I think as a strength coach, we have that reward. And as a coach, we have that reward of seeing what our kids, our athletes' limits are, because they either execute or they don't. And if they don't, they learn something. And if they do, they learn something. And so it's just stretching your potential. And so for me, the PhD is an opportunity to stretch my potential. And while I'm doing it, it's to show other people you can. It's to show other people it's possible. It's to show other people you can find a way to stretch your potential. Because I tell people all the time, my title says strength coach, but I'm going to teach you how to do stocks. My title says strength coach, but I'm going to teach you about nutrition. My title says strength coach, but I'm going to get this PhD. And I'm going to constantly stretch my potential because I have to. We have to. And if that's going to continue to change one more mind, then I'm going to do it.
So do you have a thesis?
No, I do not have a thesis yet. But the funny thing is, I have a huge passion for stress. I want to find a way where I can research stress, because at the end of the day, that's my number one job. The more stress I can put on your body and the more you can handle, that means you're getting stronger. But on the other side of the coin, how are they dealing with stress? Stress because their family life isn't safe. They're stressed because they have their own children to care for. Stressed because they're worried about how they're going to eat, and how are they still managing to perform on Saturdays? Still managing to perform on game days. And at the end of the day, managing this thing, right? And so for me, I would love to find a way to do something in stress, because I just think it's phenomenal how today's student athlete, it's unreal the amount of pressure and the amount of things we put on them. And I said we, because I'm in it too, that we put on them, and they still perform for us day in and day out. So I think it's phenomenal, to be quite honest with you. And so to me, I would love to do something related to that in some kind of capacity.
So after I guess it would have been the Gator Bowl at the end of the 2008 season, you walk away and you start coaching in middle school. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. I coached at Pendleton.
Is that right?
I coached at Pendleton, that their middle school. And I fell in love with it. It was amazing. And being able to help those kids, and being able to give those kids that experience that probably, and again, this is younger Akeem. Some of those moments I'm not proud of. And some of those moments I'm like, man, that's what I knew. So I was trying to give them the best of what I had. But being able to, my best memory, to be quite honest with you, is I remember, I think it was two kids had all D's. Two kids had all D's. And I'm like, how is this possible? Because I literally said, bring your report cards, because I was there. I said, how is this possible? We're having all D's. And so I told them, I said, you're not playing the first half. I care for you too much to give you this reward. You're not playing the first half. And, at that time, it was so refreshing to be able to say that. And the coach was like, I support it. You're not playing. And I mean, the kids were shocked. They were shocked. But at the end of the day, that life lesson that they ended up learning I'm not going to reward you. You're not going to get rewarded for things if you're not even trying to put yourself in the right position to have the opportunity. And so, just little life lessons like that, I was able to try to teach, and I was learning it myself. And so, yeah, I coached at Pendleton. We finished 8-1. And then after that, I had the taste, and I wanted to experience more of it. And so I ended up following my girlfriend at the time to Missouri of Science and Technology. And I was like, I still want to coach. And I just remember walking into his office, and I was like, I don't want to work with your football team. And he was like, do you have any resume? Do you have anything? And I'm like, nope. And I was just like, again, right? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, nope. And he just goes, tell you what, the football team's training at 6 a.m. tomorrow, and you can go and see our O-line coach, who's also our strength coach. I said, great. Showed up the next day at 6 a.m. and I was like, hey, I'm here to work with your football team. And he's like, who are you? And, the rest was history. And he said, well, we come in at 6 every morning, every day. And he's like, if you can handle it, I said, I'll be here. And that was the last of that. And so it's almost been close to 10 years now. And I love that experience. I love that opportunity to have that relationship. I love that opportunity to be able to have those kind of conversations with these athletes as they're becoming their own individual. They're becoming their own, father figures for their future, families. I love these opportunities.
So then still in Missouri, your then girlfriend of 5 years decides she's done abruptly. Yeah. So that was different.
So literally I spent 2 years there I spent 2 years at Missouri Science and Technology, and we were together for 5. So we were together at Clemson, and I moved up there with her because she was getting her PhD from there. And, it was literally the second year of there, but our 5th year in a relationship, she was just like, I'm not happy. And I remember just being so mad, so upset, because the first thing that went through my mind was, how are you not happy when I'm doing all of this for you? I'm going to work at 6 a.m. I'm volunteering. I'm not even getting paid. I'm doing all of these things and you're not happy? And in hindsight, fully understand where she comes from, fully respect where she comes from, because she is so right. She wasn't looking for someone to be a guy to go to work every day, check all the boxes. She was just looking for someone to say, how's your day? She was looking for someone to say, how are you feeling? And I was so young and immature. I didn't know those things, and so she ended up breaking up with me. I dang near had a nervous breakdown because I literally had no job. I was just volunteering. So the only money I had left was money that I saved up from bowl games. That was the only money I had left. And so in her saying that, she was like, you can stay in the other bedroom. But I was like, I'm not doing that. My mind couldn't handle not being in that situation. So I left. But in me leaving, I had nowhere to go. And then the money that I did save up from the bowl games, I was paying my mom's bills because my parents were getting separated at the time and my dad moved back to Jamaica. And so I was paying his bills, her bills, and I could not tell them no because they are parents, right? I couldn't tell my own parents no. And at the end, I lost it all.
I want to interrupt for just a minute. Different topic, but I want to get back to this topic. The subject of player compensation. Do people realize, like, in a lot of cases, the money that these kids are getting now, it's not like they're going out and blowing it on themselves. In a lot of cases, they're sending it home to provide for family members who are going through struggles.
Oh, yes. I'm at an NAIA school now, and I have to tell, and it hurts my heart, but I have to tell kids now going to an NAIA school where a scholarship is only $4,000 that you're going to have to tell your parents, I can't send you money. So they're doing it even at this level. So yes, the money, and I'm air quoting that, the money that they are making, they're not keeping it. They're not just blowing it. Like they're providing for others. I'll tell you mine because I'm open and honest with it. But I ended up giving my parents $5,000.
Wow.
I ended up out of my entire time at Clemson, I gave my parents $5,000 in that span. So of me breaking up, spending 2 weeks in my truck, I ended up giving them $5,000 because I was paying for my mom's bills and I was paying for my dad to be able to be financially set because he had no money himself. And I could not tell them. Not saying they were saying you can't tell me no. I just didn't know how to. I didn't think that was fair. I didn't think that you can even have that right to say that. And so I just kept giving and giving and giving and giving. And next thing I know, I had to get really comfortable in my truck because that was my bedroom.
And then what's the next step? How did you get through that? Last week you mentioned writing down the list.
Yep.
Can you share and enlighten on that?
Yeah. So during the second week, I ended up talking to one of the coaches on the team because I was still volunteering, but I ended up talking to one of the coaches and I ended up telling him what happened. And he says, well, man, we can't have that happen, man. So I can help you. And so I ended up staying in his office at his home, and it was literally like a small office. And so I was either sleeping on the floor or I was sleeping on the couch. And everything else that I could fit in my truck at the time was in my truck. And that was my life. That was it. It was trying to make this work. And I remember just on one night, I just was so frustrated. I was so mad. And I said to myself, I can't do this anymore. I can't take it. So I just went for a walk. And in me going for a walk, I'm literally in a t-shirt and shorts in Missouri in November. And it's freezing. Like, because again, it's freezing. And I just remember just walking. And I ended up seeing my ex-girlfriend's car at her now like husband's place. And I just remember thinking to myself, they ruined my life. The only reason I'm in this situation is because they ruined me. And I just remember walking up to the front door and I said to myself, I should break this door down. And then I just stood there. And then after standing there for 10 minutes, I walked to the back of the house and I stood at the back of the window. And I was like, I should destroy them like they did me. And I just remember just like something just took over my body and somehow I made it home. My body was cold to the touch. And I just remember crying myself to sleep. And the next day I woke up and a voice just came over me and said, if you want to keep living like that, go ahead. Or you can change. And I just remember thinking to myself, how can I change? And as I'm saying that, I opened up my laptop that was given to me from Clemson. So I didn't just have money to have a laptop. I opened up my laptop and I just write, I am. And I was like, I'm what? Like, I'm saying this out loud. I am saying, I am what? I don't know what that means. And it was just it was the first time I've ever had an internal conversation with myself. And so after about 30 minutes, I finally wrote down, I am thankful for today. And I was like, I don't believe that. That's not true. And I was like, what else are you? And I was like, I don't know. And then again, I wrote down, I am blessed. And then again, I wrote down, I am awesome. And then words kept pouring out. And then after about the sixth one, it was, I am sexy and I know it. And I was like, I know I'm not. Like, and I was so embarrassed. And after 3 hours, I came up with 27 different things. And the first says, I am thankful for today. And the last says, I am grateful if I could see tomorrow. And I try to live that. I try to live that every single day for myself, for the athletes I coach, for my relationship now, for the woman I want to call my wife, for my future children. Like, I try to live that, be that every single day, knowing if some days are going to be easier than others, knowing some days are going to be a challenge. But I start off with, I'm thankful for today, because that means you have purpose and that means you have life. And then you ended up at Missouri. Oh, yes. So it ended up so after like making this poster during that time, I just remember meeting Pat Ivy at a camp, and I just was like, man, this he looks like me. He's a coach that looks like me. He is something that I want to try to do. And I just remember I was like, I want to see what they do. And I just remember driving up there. It was 3 a.m. and I drove an hour and a half to get there by 5 because they had a 6 o'clock lift, and I worked all day. And then I went home, and then I did it again the next day. And then I went home, and then I did it again the next day. And on the third day, I just remember walking into his office and I said, I want to work with your staff. And he looks at me like, do you even have a place up here? I was like, nope. He's like, do you know anybody up here? Nope. And he was like, call this number. And I said, okay. So I called this number, and it's a fraternity house. And so I ended up being a house dad for 60 frat guys.
What fraternity?
Sig Ep. Yeah, they were called Sig Ep. Mm-hmm. And I just remember being that house dad. And so every day I would wake up, go to work at 6 a.m., and I would get home around 6 p.m., and I would still stay up because now I got to make sure the kids are at the fraternity house aren't breaking the house down. I have to make sure that people are safe. And so in my first year at working there, I ended up taking 13 girls home because 13 girls could not, they just couldn't handle themselves at the house. I just didn't feel like, I didn't like the situation. And so I was like, I'm taking you home.
And so you were there for a year at the fraternity house?
Yeah, and they fired me.
The fraternity fired you?
Yeah. I was too strict. They fired me because I was too strict because I didn't know, I don't know fraternity rules. So
you took too many girls home.
Yeah, pretty much. I was taking people home and they were like, basically I made the whole house clean. And I didn't know there was a rule, only pledges clean. So I made everybody clean. We had a time. I got them all up. I was knocking on doors. There was no, like, if you're at the house, you're cleaning. And I'm talking about everybody. And this is a funny story. I remember like having everybody clean. And in the process of having everybody clean, I walked past this one room and guys are just sitting there watching NFL football. And so I backtrack and I look in the room. I said, do you have a problem with cleaning? And they looked at me like, and this is before, again, I knew the rule of pledges or whatever. And I walked up to their TV and I shut it off. I shut it off and I'm screaming. I said, everybody gonna work in this house. And I'm screaming, losing my mind. I go in the hallway and I said, if you got a problem with me, how about you tell it to my face? And literally, the moment those last words came out my mouth, I was going to walk downstairs. Somebody just finished mopping the stairs and I fell down 2 flights of stairs. But I was so fired up that the moment my butt hit the last step, I popped up and I said, get back to work. So, yeah. They let me go.
And so you got your master's at Missouri as well?
Yep. I ended up getting my master's in Missouri in positive coaching and psychology. So everything that I try to do is how can we think? How can we think about it? Can we think differently? Can we look at this differently? Can we change our perspective? Right? That's the real key. Can we change our perspective on this situation? And so I was blessed with that opportunity to be able to complete my master's. And I think it makes me a holistic coach because yes, I can put weight on your back. Yes, I can get you stronger, but I want to get your mind stronger too. I want to get your mentality stronger as well. And sometimes it's not just how much times can I make you run? Sometimes it's, hey, you're late. Who do you want to pick to do your punishment because you're late? Sometimes it's, hey, you're late. You have to go around and tell everyone you're sorry for being late while doing this exercise. Sometimes it's, how do you guys feel today? Who wants to speak on behalf of the team? And, it's just taking them outside of their comfort zones and making them have like real life decision-making processes go on.
Then 6 years at New Mexico State after that, after Missouri?
Yeah, so I left Missouri in November of I left Missouri in November of 2014. So after I completed my master's, I was trying so hard to get into the PhD program there. And I missed the cut by 2 people. I was number 9 and they only took 7. And so I was like, I got to move on. And New Mexico State was a blessing in itself because I remember just having a vision about a desert back when I first started at Missouri. I called my dad and I said, Pop, it's coming true. But I said, I'm in a desert. I don't know why I'm in a desert when I just accepted the GA position here at Missouri and I have 2 years. And so 2 years later, I'm going to the desert. So I went to New Mexico State in November of 2014. And I left there in July of 2019. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and I'm definitely having the opportunities to put it all together here, put all my experiences from New Mexico State, from my playing experience, and also from Missouri, all into this opportunity. And so that's why I can look you in the eyes and say, hey, yeah, like at the end of the day, I'm gonna do my PhD. At the end of the day, I'm gonna try to be an associate. At the end of the day, I'm gonna try to have my hand on so many different departments because I want to try to impact this athlete holistically.
Harris Flooring has been a major part of the facilities enhancements over at Clemson, not just with athletics, but also at the university level. And we are thrilled that they are a part of the Dubcast as a sponsor. Since 1947, the Junkins family and Harris Flooring have provided a unique shopping experience through value in their services, developing the right product solutions, and delivering on their promises. To check out some reviews on their work, just go to their Facebook page, Harris Flooring America. Rave reviews, just first class all the way. Phone number 864-642-6183. If you're a business owner and your business involves credit card processing, you need to reach out to Tandem Innovative Payment Solutions. A lot of different ways that Tandem can improve your bottom line by shaving off some of those expenses. In addition to processing credit card payments, Tandem also manages inventory, schedules staff, tracks sales, gains insight into customers, and gets transaction reports. With Tandem, you're not a number, you're a neighbor. Learn more about Tandem at tandempayment.com. How do you manage the current situation with COVID and all that? And I should know this. I'm ignorant of this. Has there been a decision made in the NAIA about any of the proceeding with sports and football?
They're meeting on it this week. Okay. So there has not been a decision as of yet, but there's a committee of basically, I think, over 20 different athletic directors of the NAIA, and they're all meeting on it to basically come up with a decision. So we should know almost by the end of this week of what we're going to do.
And how have you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, how have you managed it so far? I guess as a strength coach, you're like one of the main points of contact with all the workouts and such.
Well, I tried to jump on a lot of committees because I think at the end of the day, and again, I learned this from my mentor, but I think at the end of the day, you got to try to get on as many committees as you can because they're the ones making the final verdict. They're the ones making the final call. And so I had the opportunity to be on the committee with the head athletic trainer here. And we've written the policy for what the weight room should look like. We've written the policy of what the cleaning of the weight room looks like. We've written the policy of how we're going to monitor the kids as far as the daily, how they're coming in and out of just our facilities. But I was a part of those conversations instead of those decisions happening without me and then them telling me what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And so that's been the biggest thing. I think you have to try your best to get on committees because even if you're not the one making the final decision, you still had some impact or you still had an opportunity to make some impact or you're still just the first to know. So you can prepare for it differently. And so I was able to get on that committee. I've been also on 2 racial tension committees as well. And so there's just been a lot of dialogue with the head athletic trainer, the athletic director of the entire university. I've been in conversations with the director of multicultural studies, just a lot of meetings and a lot of discussion. And through those discussions, been policy and been direction and so forth.
Do you think football can be pulled off just with the nature of the virus and the nature of football just being such a contact driven game?
I think it's difficult. It's difficult because you have to go back to the primary source, and the primary source is the health and well-being of the kid, the athlete themselves. And we, and when I say we, I'm talking about coaches, I'm talking about administrators, I'm talking about athletic trainers. We don't have a legitimate answer to what happens if ... You see what I'm saying? Yeah. There's a lot of well, we can do this and we can do that. There's a lot of that, but I think it's hard to come up with, well, what will we do if ... And that's been the hardest thing. And so that's one of the committees I was not able to get on as far as will football be played. But I think the people that are in those seats and in those positions are thinking first and foremost about the well-being of the athlete. And can it be done on a long period of time? Can it be done for several months? And I think that's the hard thing to answer. So it'll be difficult.
Yeah, and it seems like, just anecdotally, just using Clemson as an example. I mean, I believe they had 37, I think even maybe past 40 players who tested positive, but more than half of them were asymptomatic, none hospitalized, and it sounds like that almost all of them are past it, or at least tested negative. Yep. And so, I just wonder, as we're trying to figure out policy with athletics, like how much, at what point do the statistics of asymptomatic cases and even with the ones who are symptomatic, it seems minor, how, at what point those statistics come into play as far as determining, the route forward. But it might be, I guess as you were saying, it's there's still a lot that you don't know.
Well, and I think to that point too, right? That's a great question as well, because I think to that point, who wants to be the one to test that theory out?
Yeah.
So you ask a legit question. But who wants to be the one? Who wants to be the university? Who wants to be the institution to be the test? And that's a hard answer. And that, because right, again, we can come up with a lot of things to say, well, we'll do this and we can do this and we can prepare this, but it's hard to answer the what if, because that means you're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
But again, who wants to be that one? Because it only takes one, right? It only takes one case to go south. Then it's a whole different narrative. So yeah. I think that's what people aren't seeing, right? People aren't seeing the fact that, okay, we can do it, but are you willing to put your child up in that situation? And that's hard, and that's what people are trying to think of, and that's what people are trying to prepare for. But again, it's hard because we don't know.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Akeem Robinson, you're a very busy man, so you've given us an hour of your time this week and about a half hour of your time last week. Is there anything I haven't asked that you'd like to, anything that I haven't covered that you'd like to share that we haven't talked about?
Again, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I just want to say thank you for this moment. And I also just want to share that whatever I did share, if it offended, if it made people feel a certain kind of way, those weren't my intentions. But at the end of the day, like I tell my kids, we don't have to agree on things, but we can be willing to have difficult conversation. And so just at the end of the day, just be willing to educate yourself. And sometimes listening is also education as well. And so I just appreciate the opportunity. I just appreciate this. And if this can change one heart, change one mind, then I appreciate it.
Man, and I don't say this to flatter you. I genuinely think you would, with all the stuff you're doing and all your pursuits of the mental well-being of the athletes and the whole and all that, I think you'd be a great fit under Dabo Sweeney's staff, because they do such a fantastic job of addressing all those peripheral sort of, but very important topics like player psychology and preparing the kids for life after football and the total person and not just the football player. So
it matters. It truly matters, because they're people too, right? And at the end of the day, we have to treat people like people. And so we have to take them into account that this is only a small blip of their life, but hopefully we can help them that when they're in the opportunity to be a better husband, better father, a better mentor, a better teacher, a better mother, a better CEO, a better leader, a better boss, they think about it.
Have you, are you informed and have you studied up on the Paul journey and Jeff Davis and what's going on up here with all that?
No, I have not. I have not. I've reached out a few times, but man, just again, in the landscape of how things are, it can be very difficult, but I'm always willing to have conversations. I'm always willing to learn and listen myself. And so at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to say those won't happen, just waiting for an opportunity. I'm trying to find those opportunities as well.
Yeah. What really makes me happy about hearing about the Paul journey and all the stuff they're doing is it seemed like when, during your time as a college player, it was more players viewed as commodities and, okay, we're interested in you, but only for what you can give us during your 4 or 5 years when you're here. And then you're on your own after that. Whereas now seems like there are so many resources, so many more resources being devoted to preparing those athletes for when the cheering stops, and which comes much sooner than most of these athletes are expecting.
Yeah, and I definitely think there are some universities that can do that and give that off. I didn't feel as if Clemson was trying to just be like, all right, next, but yeah, again, I think it's all just different visions. I think it's different of how you kind of run your ship, and I think when Dabo took over, from what I remember, it was he's going to be businesslike, but he wants us to think differently, and so it was just a whole different mindset. But again, I feel like both did different things because that's what they learned. That's what they did. That's what they wanted to do. But yeah, it's a whole different ballgame with him. And I think he's also surrounded himself with great people too, right? Like a lot of times people get titled with great leader or great athlete or great person, but sometimes you have to look at the team too. Like the team of people they have around them is also very special too. Like even at the end of the day, like I don't want to make this religious, but even Jesus had a team. So
yeah.
So at the end of the day, like no one is above doing it by themselves.
Akeem Robinson, what an impressive story. Props for who you've become and what you've made out of your life. Just a great story.
I appreciate that. And again, what you're doing is amazing. And just giving people that opportunity to have a platform and just giving people another perspective to look into and another way to educate is phenomenal. And so I just thank you once again for this opportunity and just wish you the best and just God bless.
Okay, great stuff from Akeem Robinson. Thanks to him for sharing his time with us. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate also the support of our sponsors. Please patronize all the businesses on here that you can, and also all the businesses in your area that you know and love. We will be back next week. Thank y'all for listening this week. Everybody have a great rest of the week and weekend. Cheers.